Hello everyone, I hope you're good. It's Dave. Not done a video for a few days, but I'm back now. And I just thought of, as I was walking along then, loads of ideas popping into my mind. What should I talk about? What should I talk about? I thought we'd talk about science as religion. Really interesting concept. I know I'm certainly not alone in asserting that the science has morphed into a hardcore religion for many people, and I want to talk about how that kind of like instinct for God, how when it does transform into a belief about something in an attempt to find meaning, how it can become warped and twisted, and how it ultimately can make people engage in the most absurd and awful behaviours, just like a doctrinal belief in religion can. Now, you probably know from my videos and from you know, my thoughts that I do believe in I don't know, I guess holding myself to account externally as well as internally. So that means holding myself to account to what? Well, to an external authority or presence who provides me with some intuitive knowing of what's right and what's wrong. To me, that's what God is to me, is an internal guiding set of principles, like an internal moral compass based around, you know, awareness and intuition and empathy. That's what God is to me, and I believe it's real. I believe that is real. It'll take years and years and years and years for me to try to unpick those threads. I certainly don't feel on an intellectual level plane high enough to be able to really dig deep into God and spirituality and to be able to articulate it. But just to set the tone for this video, that's where I come from with regard to being this world that I inhabit right here, right now, the internal world, and something that is nebulous and difficult to impossible to define, but also that is guiding me, even with all the mistakes I continue to make, that guides me through my life, as difficult as it often is. So yeah, so going back to, you know, the demise of God and spirituality in the West, you know, the ultimate question for, I can't remember whether I said this right at the start of the video, the ultimate question for science is, and this isn't my quote, I read it, the ultimate question for science is, can science prove that the instinct for God does not exist? Well, there you go, that's a conundrum, isn't it? Because it can't. So, which is a retort to, you know, the let's say the atheists would say, and they are correct in many ways, the most absurd belief that one can hold is that God does exist, because how can anybody go about to prove that? Well, they can't. So that's the rational, I don't know, reductionist approach to it. But that can be answered with, well, can the instinct, can the need for, can the pursuit of God that many people, or some people have, can science disprove that doesn't exist in every human being, and that simply what it does is it means that instinct manifests and morphs so that into different methods of beliefs and behaviours, and that God as they know it appears in very bizarre, absurd, often evil forms. So let's go back to what I touched on at the start. Science has become religion for many people, and I want to get off the religious kind of like connotations now and just talk very practically, or very logically, from a science point of view, because I think it's very interesting how those passionate advocates of the science, those passionate doctrinal zealots of the science, because they've been conditioned by the science as a religion, they either don't know what science is, or they have been forgotten via the conditioning and the brainwashing that they have undergone. Now, it's not just the science, you know, these religious instincts that are really taking hold in the West are also, we're also seeing them show up in deification of institutions such as the National Health Service in the UK, albeit a lot of people are starting to wake up and change their minds on the National Health Service, the European Union, and you'll see it in these establishment-backed social movements, such as, you know, the trans movement and Extinction Rebellion and this kind of thing. And the common thread that runs right through these establishment-backed social movements is a complete absence of introspection, awareness, meaning, purpose, and God and spirituality, which of course is always the template for tyrants to follow. They must remove God from a society. Anyway, I said in order to be able to impose their political ideology, their statism, whatever it is, their twisted, you know, beliefs on their citizens. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to go into the God versus science dilemma, conundrum, conversation, but to talk about how I have observed, how I've observed how those who are fixated and obsessed about the science, how they are very, very unscientific and clearly don't understand or have forgotten the principles of science, what science is. So the first thing to say is there's no such thing as the science. You know, there is no such thing. For me, what is science? Speaking as someone who's not a scientist, but I did do, for what it's worth, I did do, you know, pretty well. Hello, at science, at school, A-levels. I feel like I understand the underpinning principles of science, because for me it's obvious. Science is all about attempting to build consensus whilst at the same time attempting to demolish that consensus. So, you know, if somebody wants to say all sheep are white, then the dissenter's job will be to say no, 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 some sheep are black, and then to go and prove that. Equally so, I don't buy into the flat earth theory at all, but it's the dissenter's job to say the earth is not spherical, it is flat, and it is science's job to, or anybody who has a respect and understanding of science, to listen to that dissenting view and then to attempt to disprove it. And it is the dissenter's view to attempt to provide the evidence to disprove the already held belief. Now, what else is science about? Well, yes, it is about curiosity and dissent, I think. Curiosity and dissent, which means open-mindedness to any available solution, any available reason, any available explanation, but also to dissent in terms of anything that's become established, unless it is one of the infinitesimally small number of facts that we do know. Everything is open to question. Everything is open to being tested. Every hypothesis, every theory is open to being explored, to being tested, and to being discredited. Now, that's what science is. And for me, it's so interesting how, as I say, those who are most passionately advocating the science with regard to what's going on with the COVID thing, they really don't understand those very, very basic and simple principles, which I think is incredible and is very revealing. Because what's it revealing of? It's revealing of how science has become a religion. When you take into account as well another concept that springs to mind when it comes to science is variables, and ensuring that as many variables as possible are identified, and that the variables that will come up along the way as well are identified. Changing variables, changing circumstances. Now, if you put the word "the" in front of anything, for me it becomes very doctrinal, very dogmatic, and very fixed in place, and you can't have that with science, which is why those who argued so much for they were following the science, they never were following this. They never were following science, as stupid a phrase as that is. Following science is a stupid phrase. Following the science is an insanely stupid phrase. They never were, because they couldn't, because the in front of the word science gives it a fixed position, one by where it is correct and must not be challenged. And of course that's what we saw, which then gave its followers, the religious followers, just like in a religion, where people will go to a place of worship and will be talked at. Now, whether they want to or not, there's nothing wrong with that at all, but again, we have to look back into history and see what crimes are being committed in the name of religion. But like a doctrinal, kind of like dogmatic stance on religion is one by, you know, the word of God, the word of Allah, the word of Jehovah, I don't know, you know, cannot be challenged. It is the truth. It is the truth. So you're talked at, so there's no conversation. There's no real contribution. This is the truth, and if you want to follow the truth and the light, then this is what you must think. And that, for me, is where we have to see. God isn't religion for me. I said I wouldn't talk about God, but it just come back again. It's about this for me. It's about connection. It's about learning from nature. It's about trying to just expand awareness and consciousness, and it's about an inner moral guide and compass, guide and force. It's never about a religious. It's never about a religious doctrine. And in saying that, the Bible stories, which I've just started to become interested in the last couple of years, they provide symbolism and the archetypes and the stories in the most complex but simple forms that humanity has never been able to better explain the human condition by. So, but that's because the Bible for me is open to interpretation. So I hope you get what I'm saying. Hope you see where I'm trying to tie these two concepts together. But to go right back to the start, yes, those who you know, said I'll wear a mask because I'm following the science. You know, I'll get a jab because I'm following the science. I'll lock myself down because I'm following the science. There never was a scientific ethos underpinning their beliefs and behaviours. There simply never was. Because if there was, they would have seen that the arguments against doing those things were valid. They would have seen that the number of variables, you know, when discussing a novel coronavirus outbreak, let's call it that, and the measures that should have been imposed as a result of that, the number of variables attributed, projecting over a number of months, were infinite in their number. So to say we followed the science was ridiculous. And again, this isn't me for the purposes of YouTube. I'm not giving an opinion on what was right and what was wrong. You already know. I'm just wanting to explore this this concept, and how actually, once again, it's interesting, isn't it, how those who are, Jordan Peterson has a very good phrase, there are those who are educated beyond their intelligence. It's so true, you know. Education, the traditional mainstream education, primarily is about, I believe, regurgitation. You know, regurgitation of other people's ideas. Not that much creativity, ingenuity and independent thinking in mainstream education in the West. And it tends to churn out, you know, too many people who are, you know, not able to critically think not able to apply basic principles of, you know, true education. So, you know, questions. That's another trait actually that you will have observed in those who have, you know, obsessively and fanatically followed their COVID religion. You will have noticed that they've never once asked a question, ever. Now, science is all about questions, it's not about answers. Einstein said that the questions are more important than the answers. But if you've got people who are educated beyond their intelligence, or who've been brainwashed, or who don't have a high enough degree of introspection or connection with what they define as God or what they feel is God, they won't ask questions. They won't, because everything's rationalised in a way that's been rationalised for them, as irrational as it is. So questions for these type of people are an indication of weakness, and an indication that what they've been told to believe, that they become so emotionally and psychologically and existentially attached to, is wrong. So those beliefs, when challenged, even in the most tenuous way, by people like me saying there's no such thing as the science, and then being able to put very, very, very clear and simple and logical and you know, rational, reasonable challenges in the form of simple and polite dissent to the established, you know, science, they simply they will shut down, they will look away, they'll get the glazed look in their eye, they'll call you names. And that's why, because it's religion that makes people act like that. And that's why the science is a religion, and why the followers of the science religion really don't understand science at all. In fact, they're the very last people in the world who understand what science actually is, which is an area, a concept full of confusion. It's very nebulous, one where we understand the trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of what there is to know. Well, that's what science is. Anyway, okay, let me know what you think of this video. I hope you're good, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.